Welcome to Alpha Centauri. I'll be your guide. You can call me Alpha. And while I am Catholic, this is not a Catholic channel. This channel is dedicated to anti-apologetics. Here, we deconstruct and analyze the messaging of apologists and polemicists of all faiths, religions, denominations, and philosophies, exposing rhetorical tricks, emotional manipulations, and fallacious propaganda along the way. Join me today as we explore 10 Reasons Why I'm an Atheist by this gentleman right there. I don't know his name. I've never seen his channel before. It is a bit of an older video, but today I feel like doing some low-hanging fruit. So let's do this. Let's have some fun.
Hey everybody, it's the Agnosticator. Welcome to the first official video on my YouTube channel.
The Agnosticator. Not bad. Not a great name. Not a terrible name for, I think it's a 7-year-old video. So for 7 years ago, great job.
Today I just wanted to get to something that really kind of defines who I am as a person, what I believe about the world, and that's why am I an atheist? Now, people who I grew up with, people who knew me when I was younger, they asked me why and how I could ever be an atheist. For those of you who don't know, I grew up as a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. I was a six-day creationist. I believe that the Bible was the true and inerrant word of God. I thought...
So right away, I'm going to have some issues with what he's saying. So I'm not a huge fan of American evangelicals, and I am not a huge fan of fundamentalists. So the fact that he's an American evangelical fundamentalist, there's already problems there. And then being a literalist, that's even worse. Literalism is itself a sort of heresy, specifically ultra-literalism, where everything in the Bible is 100% literal and there's no spiritual or analogical interpretation. That just doesn't work. And many church fathers have explained why. Anyway, let's continue on.
I thought that God actually intervened in the world, did miracles. Jesus was the real Son of God. He actually came and died for our sins. I was a dyed-in-the-wool Christian. I believe...
So I don't know what dyed-in-the-wool Christian means. I'm assuming that's something like cradle Christian, as in he was a Christian from birth, and his parents were Christian. I'm guessing that's what he means. Okay, what did he just say? Okay, that Jesus, or that God interacts directly with the world? He does. God directly interacts with the world. He also lets the world do what it wants, but he intervenes as he wishes. And usually that intervention is seen through prayer, would be the traditional way to word it. But what prayer is and what intervention is might be a little bit different than what this guy was thinking it was 7 years ago. All right, let's keep going.
Believed it with all of my heart, all of my soul, all of my mind. I was brainwashed, for lack of a better term. And so when these people, they ask me why I'm an atheist, a lot of the reasons that they think up in their head are just ridiculous. Like, do you hate God, or were you touched by a priest, or is it because of your bad experiences with church? And no, honestly, it's not any of those things. And sometimes they're surprised by the reasons I give, that they're actually thought out, philosophical and meaningful answers that I've come to through years and years of searching and thinking about this for myself.
So for those who are wondering, well, why is my channel doing this video? Number one, it's, like I said, it's low-hanging fruit. This is easier stuff to kind of do, and I've been doing a lot of content lately. Number two, as I said in my intro, I'm not just about looking at Christian apologetics. I'm also looking at other faiths and other philosophies. So he might have some emotional stuff going on, some fallacious views going on, especially when it comes toward Christianity. So this is right up my alley. I want to hear what he has to say. I obviously didn't come to the same conclusions as him. So let's keep going.
I'm going to give you 10 reasons why I'm an atheist personally, and these are also reasons why you might want to consider being an atheist yourself.
And there it is, right there. So he is doing a polemicist work, okay? So maybe he's not an apologist for atheism, but he's definitely a polemicist against Christianity.
Reason number one, I've never had a personal experience with God. So
I don't know what his perspective is or what he thinks God is, but let's just assume he means God in the way that most Christians do in general, not a specific denomination or theology here. So I've had several spiritual experiences, for lack of a better term. When I was born, there was a lot of coincidence around my birth, which was very interesting. It used to make me think I had like a fate or a destiny or that kind of thing until I discovered fate and destiny are pagan ideas, and then I let that go. Let's see. I've had mystical and outer body experiences. As a kid, I got jumped, and my heart stopped, and I had an outer body experience. Just the basic of it. I have had unexplained phenomena and some interesting stuff like that. There's a thing here where I live called the Texas Lights, which are lights that follow you if you're on the island, on South Padre Island. I've experienced that twice. I've lost time when I was a kid. I used to have deja vu all the time as a teenager. And I think probably the big ones that I had a 14A1C. I was basically on the brink of death, past death, the way the doctor said it, and I lost my ability to walk. And through prayer and changing my life, I gained my ability to walk back. It was a very long process. It was a very hard process. And it's one that changed my life completely. And through that process, at the end of it, I did eventually go back to church. So yeah, I've had religious experiences and I've had unexplained experiences. I believe in God and I know that God is real. It's not just believing for me, it's knowing. I've had enough mystical and spiritual experiences that I know there's a higher power. The outer body experience was one of those things. Me gaining my ability to walk back was another of those things. And just my prayers being answered, that kind of thing. So the other things that I've never had a point in my life where I didn't believe in God. So I wasn't always a practicing Catholic. I was what's called a lapsed Catholic. And I wasn't always living a Christian lifestyle. And for a very long time, I was very close to humanism. I was a Stoic and a Socratic, and I was a Taoist for a very, very long time. So while I always believed in God, I didn't always live by Christian principles or Christian maxims, or the Christian ethic, I guess I should say. Anyway, let's continue on.
Growing up, I was always told that Christianity wasn't a religion like Islam or Hindu. It was a relationship with Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And you were...
So I don't like it when people say that, because Christianity is 100% a religion. It meets all the definitions in any textbook on religion. So if you look at philosophy of religion, or the study of theology, or the study of world religion or global religion, Christianity meets all the definitions of a religion. I don't like it when people say that. I don't like it when people brainwash their kids to believe that, because the moment they're confronted with Christianity as a religion, there goes your faith, because you've been lying to this kid or to this person or to this gentleman his entire life.
We're literally able to feel God's presence in your life and have a relationship with Him if you were willing to put in the work and pray and read the Bible and worship God.
So put in the work is a weird thing to say coming from the denomination that he claims to be from, because that is not a works-based religion. They believe in grace alone. So he might have been going about it the wrong way the entire time, at least from his denomination's perspective. As a Catholic, I'm totally happy that he was praying. That's good. Keep doing good works.
Now, I believe this to be 100% true, and so I tried those things. I actually was, really deep in prayer every day. I was reading my Bible. I was going to church. I was going to study groups and Bible studies. I was studying the Bible with my fiance at the time, and not once did I ever have an experience of God, even like an inkling of a feeling that God was there.
So I don't know what he's expecting, but in a classical theological sense, God's always there. When the metaphor, the analogy, God turns his back or God isn't looking at you, it usually is a metaphor to mean that you've turned your back on God. So I don't know what he was expecting to feel. The burning of the bosom thing is BS for the most part. I've only heard a few devout believers talk about it. Most people who talk about it are more charismatics. And I'm not doubting that they felt something, but as someone who's practiced meditation, specifically in the Eastern sense, has practiced meditation, you can have outer body experiences. You don't even need LSD or magic mushrooms to get there. You can get to a mystical state without believing in God. So that feeling, that mystical feeling, that feeling of God's presence, you can get there without a belief in God. So whatever he's talking about here, it sounds like a problem with him, not a problem with the religion, not a problem with God. Sorry, buddy.
He never showed himself to me in any
DMT.
sort of way, and now looking back on it in hindsight as an atheist, I realize that's because there was never anything there to experience. And that's one of the driving factors as to why I'm an atheist now.
So that's an amazing leap of appeal to ignorance. So that's a huge fallacy. So we've already had two fallacies right off the bat, and we've already had one emotional appeal. And his bias from the beginning. So there's a lot of problems here with his argumentation. That doesn't mean that he's not telling the truth, but it just means his argumentation is flawed, and I would not present an appeal this way, especially if you're talking to your opponent which is what apparently he's trying to do.
Now, before I kind of just brushed it off as maybe I wasn't doing it right. I believe so deeply that there's a God. He has to be there. After thinking about it for a while, I came to two conclusions. Either there is no God, or there is a God, but he just has chosen not to reveal himself to me. And
he would be revealing himself just by the mere fact that you're able to read and you have a Bible in front of you that you can understand. That'd be one revelation. Another revelation would be the pastor or someone doing a evangelical message to you, speaking the word of God, speaking the good news. That would be a second revelation there. Your own internal conscience or your own internal truth would be a revelation, meaning that you feel guilty about things or you have an internal conscience or that internal voice. That's a type of revelation. Reason is a type of revelation. There's beauty itself. So anytime you see something beautiful, that would be God talking to you. If you want to go so far as to get Augustinian on things and a little bit where I'm at, which is even the ugly things is God talking to you. But yeah, your argumentation isn't good there, because everything could be God reaching out to you, and you could just be rejecting the message or not accepting the message or not believing the message. So that doesn't work either.
I went with option 1 because honestly, if it's option 2, that's not a God that I really want to worship. Reason number 2.
And that's not a good argument. So you not wanting to worship a God isn't the same thing as a God not existing.
Being an atheist shifts my focus to this life. When I was a Christian, it was like this life didn't even matter. The only thing that mattered in this life was whether you believed in Jesus or not.
So that sounds like you had terrible parents, not like you had a terrible religion, because this life matters incredibly. This is the life that matters. This is where your free will exists. If free will exists at all, it exists in this life, not in the next. This is the only life you got, man. So if your parents were telling you that this life didn't matter, if they were once saved, only saved, and nothing you do in this life matters, then they're just bad parents. That's not just bad theology. That's emotional abuse. So everything you do does matter. This is your only shot to do it. The next life, the next reality isn't going to be this kind of reality. So that's not a good message to give to a teenager or however old you are when your parents told you that. That's an improper understanding of the biblical message. The biblical message is that this life definitely matters. You need to help your neighbor. You need to help your friends. You need to help your enemy. You need to go out and feed the hungry, give money to the poor, find the orphan and teach them, educate them, adopt them, make them part of your family. Find the widow, make her part of your family, make her your mother, show her that you care. Go to the prisoner, the guy who's in jail, the guy who committed the crime, not even the innocent person, and show him love and compassion. So that's the message of the Bible. And Jesus makes that very explicit when he says that when you've done these things for the least of them, you've done them for me. And when you haven't done these things, even for the least of them, you have not done these things for me. So Jesus' message is very clear. You need to go out and do good works and help people because this life does matter. So if your parents were telling you something different or your pastor was telling you something different, that was the wrong message.
And you didn't focus on doing the things that you want or fulfilling your dreams. You weren't motivated to make the world a better place because ultimately you're going to die and go to heaven and be with God, and that was the ultimate thing. You know, that's what you wanted. And so being an atheist allows me to be motivated to do the things I want to do. It allows me to seek out and pursue my dream in a way that I wouldn't if I wasn't an atheist, because I realize now that more than likely this is the only chance I get. Reason number 3, atheism allows me to be more honest about my doubts. When I was a Christian, when I was a theist, talking to people who are also Christians and theists about my doubts, my personal doubts about God, my doubts about why God wasn't answering my prayers, was met with scorn. It was almost like, well, you need to just have more faith.
So doubt is not a sin, and doubt is actually encouraged. Paul actually says, test everything and only hold to that which is true. So your doubt is not a sin. Your doubt is not a problem. Your doubt is welcomed. You're welcome to come to the Catholic Church, where we have tons and tons of writings. The Catholic Church, the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, Russian Orthodox. I mean, pick your traditional Christianity, and Christians are welcome. We have tons of writings. We have things called church fathers who do nothing but question the Bible. That's all their writings are, and then they give theoretical answers. So yeah, come to the Catholic Church. Your questions are more than welcome. You won't be turned away. And if you're worried about keyboard warriors, those exist in everything, even in atheism. Ignore them. Come on to a church and come inside and ask your questions to a priest. He'll love to answer them.
And that's the exact opposite in atheism. If you don't see the evidence for something, if you don't really truly believe that something's real, and if you doubt it and you're a skeptic about it, that's celebrated. It's not something that...
And it's celebrated in Christianity. We call it mystery. There used to be a thing called an appeal to mystery, which has been lost in the West. But in the East, it's still a huge thing. And it's not just a huge thing in Eastern Christianity. It's also a huge thing in Eastern religions in general, such as, again, Buddhism, Taoism, not so much Confucianism. But yeah, so You just were looking in the wrong place, man.
That makes you a lesser of a Christian. I mean, there's stories in the Bible about Thomas, doubting Thomas, who's derided in the Bible as not having enough faith.
Doubting Thomas is not derided. He's given an answer and told, come, find your answer now. He's not derided at all.
And Jesus said about him, blessed are those who have believed and have not seen, because faith is inherent.
He's not just saying that to Thomas, he's saying that to all the apostles, because the apostles got to actually live with Jesus and meet the man. Everyone else is only going to have the Bible and story and tradition to rely on. Maybe because you're missing tradition, you don't understand that about the Bible. But the Bible is not saying this as a negative. He's saying it as a positive. You're lucky that you got to know me. Everyone else is going to have to just trust.
Believing something without evidence. Doubt is not rewarded in faith. It is rewarded in atheism.
Doubt is very much rewarded in faith. You wouldn't have St. Augustine or Thomas Aquinas without doubt. You're just wrong.
Reason number 4, beauty. And as a Christian, when I was a theist, literally the only good that nature was just pointing you back to the Creator and saying,
your religion sounds ugly and terrible and nothing like Christianity. Nature is incredibly beautiful, hence the argument from beauty. You should look at Bishop Robert Barron. He loves that argument, and he puts it in all of his writings, for the most part.
Wow, look, God created that. He must be so awesome. Rather than actually looking at nature and saying, wow, that's fucking awesome. You could no more understand the natural world and how the natural world works than you could understand the mind of God. It gave you no reason to be curious about the natural world.
Again, question everything and only hold to that which is true.
Seek out natural explanations for natural phenomena, which, to be honest, are much more interesting. For those of you who know me, I'm a naturalist. I love science.
Half the atheists in the world just got mad at you because they all try to deny whenever you're in a debate that they're a naturalist. Just saying.
I love the explanations that science gives us. I love scientific discoveries. I love understanding how the world...
So do I. In fact, a lot of the major scientific discoveries were done by Christians, specifically Catholics, but okay.
...world works. And it's actually much more interesting than just some fable or myth about somebody just speaking something into existence instantaneously.
That's not exactly what the word means. The word is constant, always existing, always creating. So things are always creating. You might call it evolution. We call it creation.
A God who would be willing to create the universe that we have now with the laws that it has now to then allow it to create life itself would be much more interesting than the God of the Bible. Reason number 5.
Apparently you don't know the God of the Bible very well, and you don't know your Bible very well. I would recommend go back and reading Genesis again and having right next to you a book of Origen, Origen's commentary on Genesis. It's a great book. Or go with the homilies of John Christensen on Genesis. He takes a more literalist point of view, but he still is open to spiritual interpretation. Or read Jerome. Any of them, they have great commentaries. I think Augustine has a commentary, but I haven't read it yet. But read what the ancient church fathers were doing when they were reading Genesis. And then see the parallels there with later scientific discovery, because a lot of the scientists were priests or monks or friars or nuns or religious. Religious is an order, by the way. And so they would take these church father explanations and try to find scientific verifiable proof to these explanations. That's how we get theories like the Big Bang. That's how we get the idea of genetics, is people looking for answers to the theories or proofs to the theories that are laid out by the church fathers. That's not all scientific theory, obviously, and there's plenty of secular scientific theory. I'm not saying give all credit to the Christians for modern science, but I'm saying you can't get to modern science without these questions being asked. And it was Christians who asked these questions. So whatever faith you were part of was not Christianity, even if they called themselves such.
I would much rather accept an uncomfortable truth than believe a comfortable lie. It sucks. We're all going to die. From what we know, we're the only species on Earth who actually has a real sense or knowledge that we will die someday.
I would argue against that. I think dolphins and elephants are pretty up there in intelligence. I'm pretty sure they have a sense of some kind of mortality. And if you let a domesticated animal develop enough and you treat them human enough in their older ages, you'll see them understand a lot of really interesting things. You have to have pets, and you have to treat them a little bit nicer than you would treat a quote-unquote animal. But yeah, you can see them develop. So while I will agree that animals are nowhere near the level of humans, the divide between human and animal is not so great, considering that humans are animals. So especially if you're coming from an atheistic perspective where you don't believe in the soul, assuming you don't believe in the soul or in ghosts, I don't know what you're talking about. Because if humans are animals, then animals will eventually, through evolution, reach a point, if under enough pressure, to have cognitive abilities. So I don't think you know exactly what you're arguing.
And while that's uncomfortable, while it's it's not nice that we're going to die, it's going to be the end. We're not coming back. We only get one shot at this.
But that's also the Christian message, unless you're confusing Christianity with Hinduism and you believe in some kind of karma. That's not Christianity. Karma is not a Christian idea. I know a lot of Christians believe in karma, but that's not a Christian idea. Resurrection is a Christian idea, but reincarnation is not a Christian idea. So I'm not exactly sure where you're going with this complaint, other than it's showing that you have a lack of understanding of Christian principles.
But rather than pretend that believing in God or saying a prayer or reading your Bible or worshiping some specific deity is going to somehow save our eternal souls and then we'll be able...
That's not the argument. Like I said, it sounds like you come from a once saved, only saved Christianity, and that is not biblical, and that's not orthodox. So, you might want to find a better Christian resource. And if you're coming from a Protestant perspective, check out Lutheranism or Anglicanism. They have pretty good resources and pretty good theologies around this kind of stuff. Maybe to check that out. Or, like I said, come be a Catholic.
Be able to live forever. Why not focus on the now and live your life the way you want to live it right now, because it's all you have. Reason number 6. I no longer, as an atheist, have to be ashamed of being human. One of the most insidious aspects of religion is that it makes you feel like you're dirty or broken or not good enough.
See, now you sound like you're a Calvinist, and you just said you were evangelical mentalist. Now you sound like a Calvinist. So total depravity is not a Christian teaching. It is a Calvinistic teaching, and Calvinism is a very popular version of Christianity. For those who don't know, that's Reformed or Presbyterian. I believe it's Presbyterian. I mean, that is a belief in a type of Christianity, but it's not a Christian belief in general, and it's not one that's universally accepted in Christianity.
And that you need to be saved by some God. But if you're an atheist and you don't have that framework anymore, you realize that the things we do, our human nature is yes, some of the things that we do are bad, but being human, being attracted to somebody of the same sex, wanting to have sex before you're married, wanting to do anything that's just a natural human urge, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, it's not a sin. You're not going to go to hell. You're not going to go to hell for thinking bad thoughts.
There's a problem that a lot of atheists do is when they make this argument, is that they forget that there's secular philosophy in the world. So Stoicism has these same rules. Stoicism is not a religion of the book. It's not a religion of God. There's plenty of Stoic atheism out there. Buddhism is an atheistic-like religion. They also have all these same rules. Platonism is going to have these kind of rules. So I don't really know where you're coming from that you think that discipline and standards are unique to Christianity, are unique to religion in general. I have tons of stuff by Aristotle. I got Matsumoto Musashi. I just think you haven't been exposed to enough things. Again, this is 7 years ago. Maybe you know more now. But there's plenty of secular philosophy and that has these same standards. Even in certain forms of communism and socialism, these standards exist. Maybe not in the liberal socialism of the West, but in traditional socialism, there's a lot of rules. I know this because I've gone to China. They have a lot of cultural rules that have nothing to do with Christianity, and they frown on a lot of the same things that you just mentioned. So it's not simply about religion.
Atheism is not about giving you a guilt trip. It's about freeing your mind and allowing you to live as you want to live, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. Reason number 7, I'm actually okay with not having all of the answers. One of the most attractive things about religion, I think, is that it claims to have an answer literally for everything.
No, it does not. Christianity has aspects of mystery cult to it. So, again, whatever you were practicing is not traditional Orthodox Christianity. And by traditional Orthodox, I don't mean capital T, Holy Tradition, or capital O, Orthodox, as in the distinct denomination. I mean lowercase t, lowercase o, Orthodox and traditional Christianity. Whatever you were following is not that, or was not that.
Where do we come from? Oh, God created us. Why do shitty things happen? Oh, sin. But in atheism, we say we're not afraid of not knowing things.
Sin is not the reason for bad things happening. That is a very overplayed card by atheists, and it does not work because that's not even the argument. The argument for original sin is about human nature. It's not about sin in the entire world. Yes, through one man, sin entered the world through Adam's actions, but that's not blaming the devil, and that's not saying that bad things couldn't happen. If Adam and Eve were killing things and eating things, then things died. If lions and tigers existed or whatever, then things were being eaten and being killed. So, and let's not even get into the whole whether or not that Genesis is literal or analogy or spiritual, I should say. Yeah, your understanding of Christianity is very below par. Very 7 years ago.
In fact, not knowing things is one of the most exciting parts of life, because then you can go out and try to figure out the things for yourself. You can find these answers for yourself rather than relying on a book that, to be honest with you, is not all that reliable. Reason number 8, I can focus on human potential rather than human weakness. This kind of ties into...
Again, it's very Calvinistic what he's saying. It doesn't sound very traditional or very orthodox.
The last point I made. Christianity and religion in general focuses on how terrible humans are, how bad we are, how we're irredeemable and we can't save ourselves. We can't do anything to help ourselves. When you're an atheist and you no longer really...
One, how would he now answer to woke Christianity and progressive Christianity? But let's not worry about that. God created you good. He saw the creation of man and said it was good. He saw the creation of everything and said it was good. Good, not totally depraved, not wicked. That doesn't mean you're not a sinner. Everyone's a sinner. Everyone makes mistakes. But that's not about damnation. So it's about forgiveness and mercy and love.
Think that, you have no reason to believe that humans can't make their situation better. I mean, this underpins so many different things. Well, like global warming or trying to keep this planet, the only one that we have, habitable. When you just decide that humans are inherently fallen and can't help themselves and can't, actually do any good, then you just resign.
By the way, as a Christian, assuming you had a baptism, your original sin was washed away, so you can't even use original sin as an excuse for your bad behavior. Just FYI.
Yourself to the fact that it's just going to get worse and worse rather than actually actively trying to work to make things better. Reason number 9, and this is pretty obvious, I just don't see evidence for a theistic God. Now, when I talk about a theistic God, I'm talking about an anthropomorphic, loving, good...
God's not anthropomorphic. Okay, so it's good to know you don't believe in a sky daddy. Congratulations, you've passed kindergarten. Congratulations. You're doing very well on your education. Most well thought out atheists know that the Christian claim is not for an anthropomorphic God. Yes, there are some low hanging fruit atheists who will try to bat away at that piñata, but that piñata is not God. If you can think of it, it's not God. If it's whatever you have in your imagination or there's a voice in your head, that's not God. That's just your own subconscious, your own imagination. You are creating an idol if you're trying to imagine what God looks like. God is ineffable. He's unknowable. He's incorporeal, omnipotent. So, yeah, sorry, this doesn't work. I understand that you come from a tradition where you took Genesis ultra literal. The word literal itself is not a bad word. It just means by the letter. So yeah, you want to take the Bible seriously and have every word contain truth. But that doesn't mean historically accurate to the modern secular standard. You don't read a book, just to give an example, of the Three Little Pigs. You don't read that book and say it's untrue because there was a talking wolf and 3 talking pigs and they built a house. There's a moral and a lesson there. There's a moral and a lesson in those first few books of Genesis. And Genesis itself as a whole is not all entirely, I guess you'd call it mythology or fable in your mind, but in a broader sense of the word, it is not simply literal history. It's talking about theological truths. And it's written post-exile to reflect a time period that they're trying to connect back to, and they're using oral tradition and stories from the surrounding peoples, and they recontextualize the most popular stories to have them be Jewish-centric, to have them be centered on the one true God, to turn it into a monotheistic story. So they're taking truth to the best of their understanding, the consensus of the time, and they're trying to change it from a pantheistic, polytheistic focus into a single focus. A term that I used to use a lot, and I'm sorry I don't use it anymore, is the shekel in the tabernacle. There needs to be a standard, a single standard, not multiple standards. So the polytheistic view is multiple standards, and each one with different variations. So you need a single standard, you need a monotheistic truth, a single truth. Go chew on that for a while.
God who wants the best for us and intervenes in the world I mean, I classify myself as an atheist. I would be open to the idea of some sort of deistic figure that set the world, the universe in motion and then allowed all these things to happen. But the evidence is just not there for a theistic God. Why would he choose to reveal himself through the writings of Bronze Age peasants who really had no idea what they were talking about?
Okay, so again, this is a bad misnomer. Only a portion of the Bible was written after the actual historical portion. The actual part of the Bible that actually reflects legitimate history is the oldest parts of the Bible. The parts of the Bible that we put in the front are not the oldest parts of the Bible. They're written later, but they reflect stories, oral traditions from earlier, and some surviving fragments of certain texts as documented in the Bible when they find these texts. Now, regardless of whether you ascribe to a J theory or a P theory, it doesn't matter. The point is, whether you're looking at the original oral author of these stories, whether you're looking at the written tradition, whether you're looking at the compiler who compiled all these traditions, or the redactor, or whatever, these stories are written at different points in time, and we can see when the oldest fragments are, and we can connect dots to what's historically accurate and which figures in the Bible appear in real history and where they coincide and how that history parallels with histories from other cultures. And we can get an exact dating in an exact area of what's factual in the Bible, what's historically factual. Also, there's a thing called genres in the Bible, so not every book in the Bible is the same genre. You have epic, you have poetry, you have liturgy. There's only a certain part of it that calls itself history. Okay, so speculative history aside, theology aside, you don't have any grasp of the historical aspect of the Bible, let alone these other aspects that you are complaining about right now. Let's continue.
Why would he then allow all these other religions that make contradictory claims to exist? Why would...
All truth is God's truth, and the Catholic and Orthodox argument is that we have the fullest version of the truth. The next fullest version would actually be Judaism, by the way. Judaism would be the next fullest version of the truth after Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Just FYI, Protestantism is going to be way down on the list.
He goes through such lengths to hide himself. And honestly, the preponderance of evidence is just not in the favor of a theistic God. And maybe even...
Saying really big words really fast doesn't make you smart or correct.
Most importantly, reason 10, unbelief is the default position. The burden of...
That is absolutely 100% untrue. So you go back to the oldest evidence of human beings and religion is there. You can go to islands when there used to be uncontacted people, there is religion there. And science has shown that people who have more religious experience, there's parts in their brains that are more active, and there's chemicals in their brains that are higher in amounts. So belief in God is not only a universal belief, but it's also a biological and evolutionarily charged belief. So you'd have to get rid of evolution, get rid of biology, and get rid of instinct and intuition to find a group that has no idea of faith. We have these people, they're called psychopaths and sociopaths. Not atheists or psychopaths or sociopaths. There are people born without these chemicals who don't have these experiences. So there's an idea that while on the far end of sociopathy, there's undeveloped parts of the mind, and on the other part, you have extreme imagination. So you could describe atheism as a lack of imagination, a lack of belief and a lack of trust. That's what you could describe atheism as. The problem is not that on the far end of atheism, you have sociopaths. You have sociopaths on the far end of religion. That's not the equation here. The equation here is that parts of the brain are more active in religious people than in atheistic people. And people who are open to spiritual realities can get there without drugs. They can get there through meditation. If they want to use drugs, they can use drugs to induce a spiritual event or a spiritual experience. So DMT exists, LSD exists. So what you're saying doesn't hold true to science. Evidence for a God or God exists everywhere. Everything is evidence. Mere creation itself is evidence. The fact that the majority of people throughout the world, throughout history, have believed in God or in gods or goddesses or spirits is evidence. This is a bad argument. It's a poorly formed argument, and it doesn't get anywhere. Of your 10 reasons, I don't think I heard one good one outside of that you yourself personally don't believe. I think that's your best argument, is that you personally don't believe. Everything else is not good. It is not a qualified argument.
Proof is always on the person making a positive claim. I use this example all the time. If my friend were to come in from outside and tell me that there's a unicorn outside in my
You mean a rhinoceros? Yeah, they exist. Let's go to the zoo and go look at the unicorns.
driveway, my default position is in the
Also, while we're at it, can we go look at the leviathans? You know, the whales at SeaWorld. And there's another mythical creature that's a modern animal. We can go look at the nymphs, which are actually just little bugs. And we can go do that. Sorry, you were saying something.
be to say, awesome, that's great, thanks for telling me. It's going to be, okay, prove it. And I'll go outside and look for the unicorn. And if it's not there, well, what do...
Again, unicorn is just a very old way of saying rhinoceros. Now, for some reason, some translator in, I guess, the 1800s or 1900s started translating the mythical Greek word for whatever unicorns are in their bestiaries into the English word unicorn, which meant rhinoceros. I don't know why they did that, but they did. And now it means a beautiful horse with a horn, but unicorn used to just mean rhinoceros. Just letting you know.
religions do? In this case, they would say, well, the unicorn's invisible and you can't test to find out if he's there. So what would be the logical, reasonable position in that case? The logical, reasonable position in that case would be disbelief or unbelief until further evidence proves you wrong.
So that is terrible, because that's not how our minds work. So almost everything that you know, you believe on faith. Almost everything that you know. Anything that you learned in school that you didn't personally experience yourself is believed on faith. Whether that's when the United States was founded, whether that's how atomic theory works, how physics works. Unless you were doing physical experiments in, let's say, late junior high, early high school, most of your knowledge, the majority of your learned knowledge is by faith. You trusted the source that it's true. In science class and in math class, it's different. You got to actually do the work. But for anything in history, anything in literature, anything in psychology, sociology, you're trusting the source that it's true. And even on practical knowledge, I used to be in wood shop, I used to be in auto shop. Before you actually try it out, you're trusting faith. You're saying, okay, this is how it says it's supposed to be done. And that's how he says he did it. But I saw this guy do it differently. And this guy says there's other ways better. But I'm going to trust the textbook and the teacher who's telling me how it's done versus what I've seen other people do, because I'm supposed to do it the correct way. And that little act right there is an act of faith. It's an act of trust. So your argument is just incorrect framing.
And that's what atheism is all about. If evidence were to come out that God exists and it was incontrovertible and it couldn't be explained any other way, and there was literally the only explanation would be a theistic God or even a God.
See, that would be taking away free will, and most Christianities believe in free will. Classical theism believes in free will. I believe in free will. Now, my definition of free will from 7 years ago has changed. So I used to be a free will absolutist. Now I'm more, I believe that there's a virtual free will that can be proven, and that there may be a limited free will. I'm not so much a compatibilist. I'm still not there. But I do believe in the existence of a virtual free will, and I do also believe that it's possible that there is a limited free will in existence. I was just watching Dune a few minutes ago, so I'll use a line from the book. I don't think it's in this movie, but I've read it in the book before, which is, even with premonition, I forget what they call it in the book, he can't see past a choice. So we can use history to figure things out, for the most part, how things are going to repeat in the secular nature that things do, but you can't see past a choice. Once you get to a hard choice, that's where real free will happens. So we might be operating on a sort of deterministic track, but eventually we get to a point where we get to make a choice. And once we make a choice, those choices, even if there are only a few choices, let's say there's only a few true free will choices for each individual, that would still compound with every single time there's a choice with every single person that's ever existed. Unless you believe some people are NPCs and they never get that chance, which would go to your more Calvinistic leanings that you're arguing against. All right, that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe. I hope you had fun with this one, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.